Right. Today we will go over the welcoming introductions, which we have already done, an overview of the 21st Century Program, what our purpose is for requests for applications. We're going to review the application process, go over a little bit about EGMS portal, and then technical assistance and question and answer opportunities. We introduced ourselves. The only person we did not introduce was Ms. Karen Rivas, who is the Director of Special Populations and Programs. Let's talk about the program overview. And so the purpose of the 21st Century Programs is to provide opportunities for academic enrichment for K-12 students, particularly those in high poverty areas and low performing schools. I am going to stress that the program is designed to provide opportunities for academic enrichment. In addition to the academic support, the program shall also offer a broad array of additional enrichment services, programs, and activities to reinforce and complement the regular school day academic program. You must also make sure that it is a safe place for students to attend and that the programs are engaging. They have to take place out of school time, which means before school, after school, weekends and holidays, or summer. Programs must also partner with community groups and schools to support those students. Families of the students have to also have opportunities for literacy and related educational development. A community learning center, and hopefully this will be the only slide that I'm going to read exactly, but because I want to stress the importance of it. A community learning center is an entity that provides academic enrichment opportunities during non-school hours for children, particularly students who attend high poverty and low performing schools. These programs help students meet state and local standards in core academic subjects such as reading and math. They offer a broad array of enrichment activities that can complement their regular academic programs and offer literacy and other educational services to the families of participating children. All of these components are a must within the 21st Century Community Learning Center programs. Programs need to be open for a minimum number of hours during the school year, depending on the grade levels in which the students are enrolled. For example, pre-K through 8th grade, 3 hours a day, 4 days per week for 25 weeks, at least 300 hours. Grades 9 through 12, 3 hours a day, 3 days a week for 25 weeks, at least 225 hours. Please focus more on the number of hours. For example, if you're going to be 5 days a week, and you're going to do 2.5 hours a day, that is okay, because we really are going to be looking for how many hours the programs are going to run throughout the year. Services to the adult family members do not contribute to these minimum hours. Funds may not be used to support programs that only operate during the summer months. In other words, you have to have a school year program. Then additionally, you can have a summer program.
Okay.
Eligibility of the schools served. Schools are eligible if they are designated as Title I, if they're at least 40% of students are low income. Although we're not using the STAR system in DC anymore, but those schools are still eligible, the ones that would have been on that list. And then the enrollment of students who may be at risk for academic failure, dropping out of school, involvement in criminal or delinquent activities, or who lack strong positive role models. There are a tremendous number of entities that are eligible to apply. The LEAs, DC public schools, and public charter school networks, but not individual schools within the LEA. private schools, other government agencies, higher education, community-based organizations, faith-based, private or nonprofit, and for-profit programs are eligible to apply. The current 21st century grantees that have funding that ends in September 23 are eligible. All other current awardees are not eligible to apply. This is a competitive application process. Please understand that everyone who applies may not receive funding. The award sizes will vary depending on the number of proposed students to be served. And you may apply for up to $2,225 per proposed students. You do not have to match funding. The award period is for 5 years, contingent on available funding. You can only supplement but not supplant. And you receive the same amount of funding each year as long as we have the funding, and you demonstrate progress and compliance metrics. The program design is it has to be aligned with DC's challenging academic standards, but please understand that homework help does not constitute academic programming. That does not mean that you can't have homework help. It means that that cannot be considered your academic enrichment. Your instructional practices have to be high quality and research-based. We already talked about the fact that it has to be outside the regular school day. And every program has to have a program director and one site coordinator per site. The location needs to be housed in an elementary, middle, or high school, or a similarly accessible community-based facility. You have to post your hours and locations and activity schedules. You have to have the appropriate equipment and a clear strategy for the safe transport of students to and from the centers and to home. It must be ADA accessible, and background and tuberculosis checks are required for all staff working with students. The required staffing is that full-time project director, and then a site coordinator for each site. There are examples of many different programs that you can have, and I'll just name a few as far as like tutoring, youth leadership development, character education. In the list, this is just an example of some of the programs. So this does not encompass everything. There is a list of pre-screened external organizations, and you can find that list on the OSSE website under 21st Century. You are not required to contract or partner with the organizations that are on this list, and we are not saying that we are endorsing these programs.
Thank you. This is Alex Mackey again, Grant Specialist, and I have the opportunity to talk with you about the Request for Applications document and related materials that are available on the OSSE website. In particular, we'll be talking about the Request for Applications document. It outlines the total process by which to complete and submit a complete application for the 21st Century Grant Program. It contains a lot of helpful information, including background about the program, requirements for operation, a full list of the questions included in the application, and the weight of each application section when being scored. There are several supplemental documents, all of which are available on the OSSE website as well, including frequently asked questions, out of school time external resources, a scoring rubric, and other ones. It's important to consider all of these when you're preparing your application, so please make sure that you check those out on the website. We'll be talking about the application process now. And we will first look at the things that take place before you're able to submit an application. All applications are submitted on the Enterprise Grants Management System, or EGMS. It can be accessed at grants.osse.dc.gov. And this is also the platform where awarded grants are managed. This is the only place where applications may be submitted. So if your organization or you do not have an access link, it is important to get one. You can go about the process on the EGMS website. There is a way to create an account. Some of the information that is in EGMS to create an account, you would need to have your federal employer ID number and a W-9 form. There's a button that says Forgot Password below the login section. This is where you can create an account. You can also make sure that your organization doesn't have credentials if you have like a generic email address. So if no credentials are found, you use the FEIN prompt to request credentials. And you can contact the EGMS help team at osse.callcenter@dc.gov if you run into any issues. Please note as well that it may take up to 48 hours for this process to take place, so it's important to get this done so that you have ample time to complete your application. The first thing that you'll do in EGMS before you're able to submit,
Sorry.
oh, no problem, to submit your application is create what's called central data. And this is an area where you provide information about your organization, including organizational contacts, your DUNS number or Dun and Bradstreet number. You need to provide information about your sam.gov account for your organization. There's some OSSE-wide certifications and assurances that need to be completed. You can see some of the examples, for example, about lobbying or suspended or being on the debarred list. And it is also a place for you to see the full range of your funding if your organization has more grants than just 21st Century from OSSE. There is an EGMS user manual that walks you through all these different components. This presentation will be on the OSSE website. There's a link that is at the top of this one that takes you to the user manual. And you may also contact the Help Center. The OSSE Help Desk is available from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday to Friday. You can email them at osse.callcenter@dc.gov, and they also have a contact phone number, 202-719-6500, if you'd like to reach out in person. Now we'll look at the application elements of the 21st Century application, now that you have an account and have your central data completed. The first section of the application is your organization's contact information. You'll be able to provide contact information for your grant manager contact and your 21st Century program contact. They may be the same person, they may be different depending on your organization. And you can also add up to 5 additional email addresses who will receive automated emails on when applications or reimbursement requests in the event that a grant is awarded are approved or disapproved. Next, you'll provide information about each site in particular. And these are the sites that your 21st Century program will be serving. You do have to include the site name, site name, street address, zip code, and ward number. And in the event that your organization is proposing to serve more than 10 sites, you'll need to reach out to OSSE for further guidance. And the email is at the bottom, 21stcclc.info@dc.gov. And this is because the EGMS system itself is set up for a potential of 10 sites, but you can serve more. Again, it only applies to those organizations proposing to serve more than 10 sites. If that's the case, please email the email listed and we'll get in touch with you. Another portion of the application is called funding distribution, and this shows the amount of funds that you have available. Because you are all in the applicant status, it is listed as $0, and this will only change after an applicant becomes a subgrantee and has been awarded funds. This is a component of the application, but there's nothing to do on it. These are the application components that are the scored component of your application. The scored components are divided into 8 sections. 7 of them are required, 1 of them is optional. The maximum number of points that you can receive is 215, and each of these different sections are called criterion. Each contains thematically related questions, so executive summary, priorities that you may have selected, your needs and resource assessment, and others. You'll see the same setup in all the materials on the OSSE website for the request for applications and supplemental documents. And what we'll do now is we'll take a look at each one of these in succession and provide some information about each. The first criterion is an executive summary, and this is where you can provide information about your program at a high level, including what is the need for your proposed program, what are the schools that you intend to serve, what are the reasons for selecting your target population, what is your theory of action about how you have designed your program based on evidence-based practice to achieve its desired outcomes, what are the capacities of your program partners, and provide an overview of the wards and neighborhoods that you'll be serving. Section 2 is optional, and this is called priorities, and we have established 5 priorities from which you may select if you choose to select any. You may select no competitive priorities, 1 of the competitive priorities, and 2 of the competitive priorities. Doing so allows you to provide a narrative description about how your organization will meet the requirements of the selected priorities, and doing so may lead to additional points on your application. We'll take a look at the 5 priorities. They each have a point value awarded to them, where if you provide a satisfactory answer, you may receive those points. Priorities are worth either 5 or 10 points. And again, you may select 0, 1, or 2 of the 5. The first is where you propose a program where at least 50% of the students are enrolled in high school with programming that includes credentialing programs, internships, residencies, workforce development activities, test prep, or readiness for advanced or honors level courses. And this includes alternative programs serving grades 9 to 12 within high schools. The second priority is proposing to offer summer programming at sites that combine to serve at least 50% of all the proposed students to be served, and that the programming per site for the summer is at least 120 hours. The third is that you propose to use the Forum for Youth Investments Program Quality Assessment tool as part of your program evaluation. These are all worth 5 points. The fourth is worth 10 points. This is where your application proposes to implement at least 1 evidence-based practice that is specifically designed for low-income middle or high school students that increases school day attendance and engagement, reduces rates of chronic absenteeism, and enhances connections between those students and the school, family, and program partners. One thing to note is that if you select this priority and you receive points for it, you may be available or selected for additional funding for the first year. And the 5th priority is if an application both proposes to serve students who attend schools identified for improvement and is also submitted jointly between at least 1 LEA receiving Title I funds and at least 1 public or private community organization. It's important to note that for this one, a joint application is not the equivalent of submitting a partnership attestation form, which will come up a little bit later in the description. And a consortium agreement is generally a legally binding agreement where 2 organizations jointly apply. So again, this is not an informal partnership or a memorandum of understanding. Criterion 3 is a needs and resource assessment, but I will be passing it over to my colleague, Dr. Brown, to lead this portion of the presentation.
Thank you, Alex. The needs and resources assessment. This section provides information that helps the reviewers at OSSE to determine if there is a need for a 21st century community learning center. So the information that is provided in the section must be supported by research-based, evidence-based information. The needs and resource assessment section must provide the reviewer with a clear understanding of the social and educational needs of the community. You should use the most current data available to highlight the identified needs that you have identified. A well-developed needs and resource assessment would include the gaps in services for students at risk of educational failure. Therefore, you should discuss the needs for academic and enrichment opportunities to help students meet the District of Columbia academic achievement standards in reading, math, and science, and those are the core academic subject areas. You should also demonstrate how the activities you're offering will address the identifying needs of the students and families that you serve, because you're required to serve the families of the students who are participating in the program. You should also talk about how your stakeholders, including parents, students, teachers, and other partners, were involved in the development of your program. That means, how did you consult with them to identify some of the needs? What are some of the things that they would like to see addressed as it relates to the requirement of 21st century program? It's also important to identify other resources available to supplement the program that you're planning to offer. Next slide. For each proposed program site, you must provide you must state if the program is new or if it's an expansion of an existing program. That would be for people who currently have the program now and are applying. They would state if it's an existing program. If you're new, applying for the first time, then you would state that it's a new program. You also should identify funding or the resources that you will use to supplement the 21st century program that you're proposing. And also provide description of how the proposed program will support the school improvement plan for each school that you're planning to serve. For the evidence-based program design, you're required to demonstrate your experience in offering after-school programming as required by 21st century, and also talk about the successes that you have had doing so, especially in the area of students' academic performance and achievement and positive youth development. It's also important for you to develop your program around the 9 characteristics present in high quality expanded learning programs. The peer reviewers will definitely be looking for that association with the design, the activities that you're offering. And next slide, please. And here's a list of the 9 characteristics present in high quality expanded learning programs. It's called partnerships, goal setting, strong management and sustainability, quality after school staffing. And I would also add staff retention. It's very important for you to have staff that will be with your program for a while. So it's not like a revolving door. That helps to strengthen your program when you can have staff that you have trained and understand the students and families that they serve to be with the program for a long time. Attention to safety, health, and nutrition, strong involvement of parents. You all know the involvement of parents' engagement. It's the importance in a child's educational growth and development. Enriching learning opportunities, linkages between the school day and the after-school program. The activities that you offer should be aligned to the school's curriculum. so you can supplement what is being offered in the daytime. Evidence-based instructional activities and practices, making sure that you're offering activities that can be replicated. Weekly schedule of meaningful activities and evaluation of program progress and effectiveness so that you can determine if you need to modify your program to meet individual students and family needs. Evidence-based program design, making sure you're describing the evidence-based research that supports the service activities to be implemented to achieve each program objective. You should discuss the proposed program that is aligned with those 9 characteristics that we discussed earlier. You should also explain how the instructional practices are aligned with the academic activities offered to students. Describe how the activities and services you are offering will help students meet state and local academic standards. And finally, discuss how the program will provide students with positive social and emotional development. For the program-based design, you also need to ensure that your objectives are aligned with the GEPRA. A template is provided, and that's Appendix G, to help with the writing of these performance measures. For each measure, applicants must write out the performance measure for their program, making adjustment to the GEPRA measures, describe the activities that will occur to meet the performance measure, describe the milestone in the process of meeting the performance measure, and describe the metric for how progress toward the performance measure will be assessed. And here's a look of the GEPRA measure indicators. Percentage of students in grades 4 to 8 participated in 21st century programming during the school year, and some who demonstrate growth in reading and language arts on state assessment. Percentage of students in grade 4 through 8 participate in the 21st century programming during the school year, and some who demonstrate growth in mathematics on the state assessment. Percentage of students in grades 7 through 8 and 10 through 12 attending 21st century program during the school year and summer with a prior year unweighted GPA of less than 3.0, who demonstrated an improved GPA. Percentage of students in grades 1 through 12 participated in the 21st century during the school year, who had the school day attendance rate at or below 90% in the prior school year and demonstrated an improved attendance rate in the current school year. For percentage of students in grades 1 through 12 attending 21st century program during the school year, and summer who experienced a decrease in school suspensions compared to the previous school year. And 5% of students in grades 1 through 5 participating in 21st century programming in the school year and summer who demonstrated an improvement in teacher-reported engagement. You may write 2 additional performance measures that are specific to your program and not necessarily to the GEPRA measures. For each optional performance measure, you must develop a SMART objective describe the activities that will be offered to meet the performance measures, and describe the milestone and the process of meeting the performance measure, and describe the metric for how progress toward the performance measure will be assessed. For criterion 5, program management and implementation, you must provide evidence-based activities, both academic and enrichment, that will address the needs that you identified for students. And these activities must meet the state and local academic achievement standards in core academic subjects, such as English, language arts, mathematics, and science. Students should receive services that are designed to reinforce and complement the academic program offered during the regular school day. The activities that you're offering should be aligned to the students, the school's curriculum. Families should also receive services from the program, and the services that you offered should help parents to assist their students at home. You can provide literacy activities, financial literacy activities, and other activities that you think parents will be able to use to support learning at home and school. These activities must be measurable to determine success and must be implemented to address the identified needs of the students and families. For the academic programming and instruction, this does not include homework. This should be prepared lessons in core academic subjects, such as math, reading, and science. And for enrichment activities, you can include social skills, teamwork, leadership, and project-based learning. And there's so many others that you can add to the list. For recreational activities, this include arts, sports, music, dance, cooking, and again, a whole host of other activities out there that you can include. You must describe the specific approaches that will be incorporated into the proposed 21st century program. And again, the activities you're offering must be aligned to the characteristics of high quality extended learning programs. Literacy and related educational programs for parents. You must describe the opportunities for literacy and other educational development for families of students. You must discuss the activities that you will offer and how these activities will help to support learning at home and school. It's about what will you be offering, how will you be offering those activities and services, and describe what are those benefits and expected outcomes. It's not just listing topics that you want to do, like parenting night, field trips with parents, or parents attending showcase of students' activities. You need to state, how are you going to do those things? What are you expecting? How will they address the needs that you identified in the needs section? That's very important. The reviewers want to see that link. Program implementation timeline. It's important that you develop a timeline to show When are you going to implement these activities? And this will help you to ensure that the things that you put on the application to be done will be done within the time frame that you have established. Partnerships. For your partners, what role will they be playing? How will they help to develop the program and enhance the program for you to meet the objectives that you established? So the roles of their partners must be clear, what they will be doing, when, where, how, and the anticipated results. Those must be clearly demonstrated in your application. You also need to have signed letters of commitment or memorandum of understanding that clearly indicates these roles and the capacity of each partner in the organization. In this section, you also need to discuss how you plan to recruit the students. What are some of the strategies you'll be using? Will you be talking to the teachers? Will you be sending out information in the community to parents, different groups, different organizations to recruit students? What will you be targeting students from private schools? Discuss how the students will travel safely to the program and back to their homes. How will you account for the students while they are in the program and when they leave? Will you be providing transportation? All those things you need to make clear in the application. How will you ensure that students with disabilities or staff will have equitable access to the program? How will you ensure that English learners will also have access and will receive information in their language so they can fully participate in the program? How will you ensure that the information about the 21st century program and what you plan to do, how you plan to implement your program, all that information, how are you going to send that out to the community? What methods are you going to use for the community to know about the program that you're planning to offer? Will you be setting up a website? Will you be doing emails, flyers? Will you be advertising, working with the school, state all that? Make sure that the reviewers understand clearly how you plan to get the information about the program out. How program staff will work with the schools and teachers, clearly state that. We want to see that linkage. We want to see how you're collaborating with the schools and your partners. How the program schedule will meet the schedule of work and families. How students and families access technology. How students will be supervised when using the internet. How the program will provide a safe environment for students. Is that a safe place? Is it conducive to learning? Describe all of that. It's important for the reviewer to see, visualize exactly what will happen on a day-to-day basis. Next slide, please. How will you be recruiting your staff? Are you looking for highly qualified teachers? Are you making sure that you have systems in place to retain your staff? Will you be providing professional development? What are the qualifications? What type of training will you be offering? How will staff be assessed? And the professional development plan. Not, please don't state you will have a professional development plan. Put a plan in place, shows what will be offered, what timing, are there conferences that they will attend, local or national, and state why you're offering these professional development. How do you plan to provide these trainings so that the program can be strengthened by the training being offered? Next, we'll have Alex present from here.
Thank you, Dr. Brown. So next we'll take a look at criterion 6, which is program evaluation and monitoring. And this is a section where you'll describe how you will use periodic evaluations to refine, improve, and strengthen your program and promote continuously improved outcomes. Questions involve what data will you use to evaluate the program, who will be responsible for it, how often it will be collected, how it relates to the performance measures that you have, and some other information related to data collection, analysis, and use. Criterion 7 is sustainability. And this is where you'll describe a preliminary plan for how the Community Learning Center will continue after this particular grant's funding has ended. You'll have a space to describe evidence of commitment from the program partners, which might include long-term use of facilities or supplies and equipments and in-kind contributions. How different sources of funds, including federal, state, and local, will be cooperatively utilized and leveraged against one another to have the most effective use of public resources, and a preliminary plan for sustaining the community after this source of federal funding ends. Criterion 8 is the detailed planning expenditure section, which is the budget. Applicants may request up to $2,225 per student proposed to be served, and you must budget for the same amount for each year. There are 6 categories of the budget, and we'll go through each one. They include salaries and benefits, professional services, equipment, supplies and materials, fixed property costs, and other objects. Before we do so, it's important to note that applicants cannot divert more than 20% of the total grant award to any single entity, including but not limited to your listed partners. And at a minimum, applicants must maintain direct control of 51% of the total grant award or more throughout the entire grant and each year. And you can also not divest oversight of the program or its implementation to another agency. We'll start with the salaries and benefits section. This only includes individuals who are paid as program staff, not contractors. And you need to make sure you include all of the required positions. You may include benefits, but they cannot exceed 23% for full-time staff and 8% for part-time staff. You can obviously pay them more, but that's the limitation from this budget. You cannot include more than 23% or 8% depending on the position type for benefits. Please do not include names when you're putting together your budget. Feel free to use TBD instead. For each of the different positions, you'll have to select from a program category code. There are 5 different codes. There's 10 instruction, 20 support services, 30 administration, 40 operations and maintenance, and 50 student transportation. You'll select the one that most appropriately fits. And in EGMS, on each budget tab, there is a link to a guide to help you make the proper determination. Professional services includes your contractors and vendors, and it must include external or third-party evaluation services. Third-party evaluations cannot exceed 8% of the total budget or per year. This includes any non-staff personnel as well that you might be paying as contractors. And as is true for all budget categories, you will identify for each line item its proper program code, either instruction, support services, administration, operations and maintenance, and student transportation. The third budget section is equipment, which is any single item that costs more than $5,000 per unit, and supplies and materials, which is any item costing less than $5,000 per unit. It's important to distinguish that this is, again, per unit, not the total cost of the purchase that you're making. If you were, as an example, purchasing computers and the total cost of those computers were $6,000, it would still be supplies and materials because it is less than $5,000 per unit. Fixed property costs are any prorated costs associated with the maintenance of properties in which the community learning center takes place. This might include rental of equipment or vehicles, property rents, utilities, insurance, and cleaning services. And then there's other objects, which is any expense that is not best categorized in any other section of the budget. This includes dues and fees, conference fees, travel fees, other transportation costs associated with student transportation. And for all these, again, you have to select the proper program category for each line item. Then there's a section of the application called attachments. It's important to note that there's not actually necessarily documents that you are attaching unless you have more than 10 sites. But attachment A is a component of the application, and it is the program summary. This is where you will list all the sites where your program will be held. For each site, you'll identify the percentages of students classified as at risk or English language learner. You will propose a certain number of students to be served and propose a certain number of adults to be served. You will identify whether or not the site is serving a Title I school-wide program, and you will identify whether it has been classified as a comprehensive support and improvement, Type 1, Type 2, or targeted support school if applicable. And an important note for any site that is not located in a school, you will use data from the school from which most of your 21st century program participants are expected to be attending. Attachment B is the populations served checklist. So for each of the different sites that you put in attachment A, you will be describing the population that will be served there. This includes whether those participants will be preschool, elementary, middle school, high school, and/or adults. You will identify the services to be provided. You will both select from a checklist of approved services, and for each of the ones that you have selected, you will provide a description of those services. The items on the checklist are comprehensive, and you should be able to find any and all of the services that you are providing in that list. You will also identify the time period that each different site is in operation, identifying whether it is operating before school, after school, holidays, weekends, and/or summertime. Attachment C is based on the information that you have included in attachments A and B. So it's important to complete these in order. And for each site, you will identify its schedule, including start and end dates, total number of days of programming, total number of weekly hours, and hours of operation per day of the week. There are different boxes so that you can say if you have a school year program, there will be little boxes for Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and you can indicate what the hours are before and after school for each site. And again, if you're proposing to serve more than 10 sites, please contact OSSE for further instructions about including this information. The limit in EGMS is 10 sites. So if you're serving more than that, you'll just need to contact us. Attachment D is information about your community partners. You will list your community partners and categorize them by the types of partnership that they are. So there are different categories. So for example, if an institution of higher education is a partner, you would write out what the institution is. And then in the category section, you will check off that you have a institution of higher education as a program partner. You must have a signed partnership attestation form for each partner that you have named. This form is available both in the RFA and on the OSSE website. One thing that is important to note, if the applicant is not a local education agency, an LEA, and you are proposing a program site that is located in a school, the school's LEA must be a program partner and provide a signed partner attestation form. This is a relationship between the applicant and the LEA. If the applicant is not an LEA, And in order to complete the data collection and analysis, a relationship must be had with that LEA. So that's particularly important that you pre-establish these partner attestation forms in advance of submitting your application.
Please note that in DCPS, you cannot get that from the school. It has to be from the LEA level.
Thank you, Dr. Kelly. The next section of the application is called budget consolidation. This is only available to applicants that are LEAs. LEAs may choose to consolidate their 21st century funds into a school-wide program. It changes the way that you account for your funds, but the purpose of those funds remains the same. Again, this is only available to LEAs that are applicants. If you are not an LEA, this is not applicable, and it is optional if you are an LEA. Then there's a section called Program Budget Summary, and this is where you will identify how funds will be used for the second, third, fourth, and fifth year, the projected grant amount. You are only identifying them based on those 6 categories that we talked about earlier: salaries and benefits, equipment, supplies, and materials. If you anticipate it will remain the same mix each of the different years, you may provide the same information. You also have an opportunity to estimate in-kind contributions if you choose to do so for each of the 5 years. The last part of the application is assurances, and there are a couple of checkboxes to check off to affirm that your organization is in compliance with federal, state, and local health and safety standards and civil rights protections for program employees and participants. You cannot submit your application without reading through and agreeing to the assurances that are listed in the application. The assurances are included in the application materials on the OSSE website and in EGMS for you to take a look at in advance of your application submission. Finally, we just have a couple of tips for writing a strong application. The first is to understand the purpose of the grant and to understand the information included in the request for applications. The next is to have a clear justification for the need for the program by clearly stating the needs of the target population and the community to be served. The third is to provide detailed program design and implementation plans that are relevant and clear for the reviewers to visualize what you're proposing and how the program will address the needs of the population to be served. The fourth is to limit information about relevant theories and discuss instead detailed the evidence-based activities, applications and benefits, expected outcomes for each activity. Tell the reviewers how the activities will address the identified needs, how the activities and services will improve student academic performance and behavior, and how parents will be supported to help their children learn. Last ones are to provide clear, specific, and relevant information in each criterion, avoid conflicting information, and spend adequate time developing your proposal.
And now, as a review of the application, there are deadlines that we need to adhere to. All applications and supporting documentation are due by 12 p.m. on August 11th. Once it is submitted, we will have a panel of external, neutral, qualified professional individuals who have been selected for their unique qualifications in the fields of elementary and secondary education, youth development, that are going to score and review every component of the application. OSSE reserves the right to inspect the proposed 21st century program sites and facilities before an award is approved, and we make final determination on all awards. About the review panel, it's going to be a panel of 3 who have been selected for one of the following qualifications. They have knowledge of the impact of after-school learning, experience in education-related field, STEM education experience, special education, English learner experience, social and emotional learning experiences working with a variety of community members, and previous experience or expertise as a grant reviewer. Applications will be selected for funding based on these criteria: the final score assigned by the application review team, and that is based on the scoring rubric that is in the RFA, the availability of funding, OSSE's approval, and once again, I remind you that this is a competitive process, and the submission of applications does not guarantee that it will be selected for funding. There are some key dates, which is June 14th, that notice of funding opportunity was published. June 28th, we released the RFA and the application was open in EGMS. If you have questions that you want to ask us, please do so by July 19th. And we'll be putting out a question and answer document soon after. That'll be on the website, August 11th. Again, applications are due. We'll do peer review, or actually the external evaluation review, between August and September, and then grant award notifications are announced. And then in September, we'll also have a post-award training session. And then October 1st is when the new grant begins. I've been kind of monitoring the chat, and I recognize that there have been some questions put into the chat. I remind you again that all questions that are received to us before July 19th will be included in the question and answer publication that will be on the website. Any questions that you have, please submit them to 21stcclc.info@dc.gov. All right, so now I open it up to questions and answers. We will start with what is in the chat. So let me go back to where the question started. And please understand that we will answer the questions that we can. Some of them we need to put in the question and answer document so that we're fair for everyone, to everyone who is attempting to apply. All right. Please clarify staffing requirements again. If we have more than one site, must there be a project director at each site or just site coordinators at each site? Yes, there needs to be a site coordinator at each site. The project director can direct more than one site. I noticed that there's a $6 million available for funding and DCPS current grant will expire, thus making them eligible. In the past, DCPS received $4.5 million, although this is a competitive application. I can't imagine DCPS not receiving a similar award. With that in mind, how many grant awards does OSSE plan to make? And is there anticipated average award size? I cannot anticipate an average award size. And I cannot guarantee that DCPS will be awarded. And so that's a little difficult for us to answer. It really depends on the applications, and yes, it is competitive. Competitive priority number 4 is 10 points. Can elementary only programs select this priority, or is it only for students serving middle and high school? Could an elementary program select a program that will help elementary students served in the 21st century to meet the goals when they get to middle school? If elementary only programs cannot select this priority, they are unlikely to be funded due to the highly competitive nature of the grant. Is this intended? The RFA says external eval will occur in years 1, 3, and 5. The guidance says external evaluation must be done in each grant year, which is more typical. Can you please provide some clarity on which one? And then the FY24 application says the applicants can add 1 to 2 measures in addition to the GEPR measures, but the performance measure document says 5, which is correct. Okay, so there were a lot of questions in there. So let's go through them individually, starting with can elementary programs select the priority for that is intended for middle and high school students? The answer to that is no. The reason that is the case is because it was specific to funding that USDE put out that additional funding for 1 year, and it was specific for middle school and high school. The next question asks about the external eval occurring in years 1, 3, and 5. External evaluations will be due to OSSE years 1 at the end of year 1, 3, and 5. That does not mean that your program is not still collecting information, nor does it mean that you're not doing an end of the year summary of what happened throughout that year. We're just saying that the entire report is due to us years 1, 3, and 5. And then it says you can add 1 to 2 measures in addition to the GEPRA measures, but the performance measure document says 5. I might need a little bit more when you say the performance measure document says 5.
Yeah, this is Lisa. I asked the question.
Okay, thank you.
Conflicting information. One document says we can add 2 and another says we can add 5. In the olden days, we could add up to 5. So maybe
I can answer this question quickly. In EGMS, the technical limit is you may add up to 2.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. In RFA Appendix B, performance measures, there are 5 GEPRA measures. On page 27 is mentioned that each application is required to address all 5. For organizations serving a specific band, high school, and not the entire K-12 continuum, are they still eligible to apply if they can't meet all 5 GEPRA measures? The answer to that is yes. Alex, you want to expand on that?
Yes, I can. In the application materials that we went over, it does indicate that you may adjust the grade band to fit the grades that you are proposing to serve. In the event that doing so is serving grades that are not incorporated into a particular GEPRA measure, it does not apply.
Sorry, Alex, can you explain a little bit what you meant by that last statement about could you describe a situation where a GEPRA measure will not apply?
There is a GEPRA measure that is specifically for grades 7 through 8 or 10 to 12. Yet some programs may propose to serve only a population of elementary school students.
Are you talking about the GPA GEPRA?
That does reference the GPA GEPRA, yes.
Okay, so I think in the last session we asked about this and you said that we were to calculate our own GPA for elementary students. Are you saying we don't need to do that?
I don't recall that specifically. I recall conversations about calculating GPA in the event that a district does not collect or publish GPA.
That is what I recall.
Okay, so if we have a program that serves K to 8, we only have to respond to the GEPRA on GPA for 7th and 8th grade students.
That is correct.
Thank you.
It says 4 hours requirements if the program meets 5 days a week, but for 2.5 hours for 4 days and 4.5 for the 5th day, will we still be eligible for elementary school? And I answered that a little earlier when I was saying yes, we are looking at the hours. And so we still needed to be for elementary school the 300 hours. How should we integrate the management of past 21st century grants in this application? Can we present comparative data from previous 21st century grants to demonstrate our effectiveness? We were instructed not to include these data in previous applications. We would like to confirm if this is permissible or not. So you're asking whether or not you can include what you've previously done to strengthen how this is going to impact this proposal that you are submitting. I'm assuming that that is what the question is. That is going to be up to you of how you want to present your information. Just remember that there are limits to the number of characters that you can fill in some of these areas. So that is completely up to you. When revising the GPRA measures to account for our grade level served, can we also remove the reference to summer if we are not applying for a summer program? Yeah, that's fine. That's not a problem. So if we have a K-5 program, for example, do we rewrite the GPRA? I think we already answered that one. Can you explain what growth on the state assessments means in GPRA 1A and 1B? Does that mean increasing a performance level from year to year or something else? We have not defined a growth. It is increasing. It could be from year to year. It could be a letter grade. It could be percentage points. Alex, anything else you want to add to that?
No, just for each GPRA measure, growth is growth. We have not identified specific thresholds of growth.
Okay, let's see. Describe how the proposed program will help students meet state and local student achievement standards. The guidance given in the grant session was that there are no separate applicable state local performance standards and applicants are to use GPRA as their objective. Do we use GPRA to answer the question?
May I answer this one quickly, Dr. Kelly?
Please.
In the RFA, when it is referencing state and local performance standards, it is referencing Common Core or equivalent academic standards. Those are separate from the performance measures that are included as the GPRA measures or the two optional ones.
The direction given in the grant session was to use the GPRA as listed in RFA as our outcomes, changing over the target age group. Being assessed as needed for GPRA measure 2, can we add younger grades or can we only change the outcome measure by choosing the applicable group within the age range grades, for example, 7 through 8, but not 10 through 12? I think we responded to that one as well. Should the additional measures?
Can I ask a follow-up on that?
Sure.
So when we were given the guidance to skip a GPRA if we're not serving the population it addresses, but that means, if I understand it right, so that application wouldn't be eligible for the points assigned to that GPRA. So by not serving that population, you do lose those points. Is that accurate?
That is not accurate. If you review the material online, you'll see that they're scored for all GPRA measures together.
Right, and it says it must address all GPRA measures as part of the rubric, right? So that's why I'm wondering.
If it is not applicable, you do not need to include it and you will not be penalized for doing so.
Okay, thanks.
I have Alex, I'm sorry, I have just a follow-up question to that as well about these grade levels. So for GPRA 5, the teacher survey one, in the Appendix B performance measures table, that GPRA is specific to grade 1 through 5. So we can only revise the grade levels within that band, is that right? So if you have a high school program, that then becomes a not applicable GPRA, is that correct?
If I understand the question, yes, but we'll make sure to include that specifically when I have an opportunity to look at them in the written materials.
Okay.
Should the additional measures, should we include targets, although they do not appear to be included in the OSSE's GPRAs? The additional measures should be SMART objectives, which means that yes, they should have targets included. For GPRA number 5, does the teacher survey question have to specifically use the term engagement in learning, or can we ask about something more tangible like participation in class? I'm thinking for a second. Dr. Brown, I see you light up. What were you about to say?
Oh, where's my page? I'm
Say it
sorry,
again?
I was gonna say anything, Mike. I was gonna say anything about that.
I can speak to this. If you look in the RFA, it indicates that the survey will be provided to you.
And the survey says engagement in learning. And it's very short and brief. And yes, the teacher survey is administered to the school year teachers only. The existing school day teacher survey that many SIB grades have been using for years includes an option for the teacher to indicate the students did not need to improve at the beginning of the school year. Should these students be counted among groups of students who demonstrated improvement, or are they to be excluded from the denominator completely? Let me sure.
I guess that's not applicable if you guys are providing the survey.
Correct.
Okay.
Since the guidance in the grant information session was that there are no separate applicable state local performance standards and application ought to use GEPRA as objectives, do we treat 4.4 as NA or use GEPRA standards to answer the question? 4.4 is describe how the proposed program will help students meet the state and local student achievement standards.
Again, as a
Okay.
reference, state and local achievement standards references DC approved standards of academic performance, including Common Core state standards. It is different from the performance measures.
The guidance in the grant info session was to use GEPRA as listed, changing only the age group. I think we've answered this one as well. Yep, we did. How much should I spend on the evaluation? In the past, I believe the guidance was roughly 8% of our budget. That is still the same 8%. Is a contractor considered a partner? Partners are the ones who signed the partner attestation. Contractors, typically, they could be. So, I mean, it depends on the agreement that you have with them. When I log into EGMS, attachment C doesn't allow me to enter the information. Text boxes are missing.
I can answer this quickly. Attachment C will only be available to complete after you have completed attachments A and B.
The first statutory priority in the RFA says that we should target services to students at schools as identified in the investment in schools and school support under the Student Success Act. The link that you share in RFA shows several school designations. For instance, there's the comprehensive school support, low performing schools. How will you score the schools or schools we've chosen to partner with? Does one designation carry a higher priority over another, or are they scored equally? So you have to have at least one of those determinations to be eligible for us to like review and everything. As far as one carrying a higher priority over another, I am going to put this in the question and answer document.
That won't leave us enough time to form a partnership or select our partners.
How will you score the school or schools we choose to partner with? All right, let me think for a second. I'm going to say that the designation of one of those choices is not going to have a higher priority over another. It just needs to be one of those.
So can we serve a school that's not on the list if we can make a case that they are serving high need students? Because earlier you said
as long as it's
a school-wide program.
long as it's meets one of those criteria, whether it was like 40% of low-income students, whether it was a Title I school, whether it was a population where students are absent and have criminal activity, and I can't remember what the third one was, but it was
No,
a
I
list.
get it. Okay, so
Okay.
they don't have to be on the list, DCPS's list.
No.
Okay, thank you. That was very helpful.
Okay. Can I clarify the comment about partner attestation forms coming from the LEA level and not the school level? Sure. Basically, the schools are not able to sign a partnership form in DCPS. You need to have that done from the partnership office within DCPS. Margot has put in here saying, for anyone partnering with a DCPS school, please send your partner attestation form. And she put a email address in here. It is dcps.partnerships@k12.cc.gov. So if you want to partner with a school in DCPS, that's where you need to send your form. Will you be including questions and answers asked in this chat in the official document? Yes. In the last meeting, we said elementary schools can apply for a competitive priority 4. Today, you said no. What's the official response, please?
Just want to be really, really clear, because there's conflicting information based from what you said in the last meeting to this one.
Okay.
Talking about elementary only programs. I'm assuming if a school serves elementary but also middle school, you can apply for the competitive priority, right?
Mm-hmm.
But what about elementary only programs? The answer in the last one of these sessions was different than the one today. So just want to make absolutely clear, because it's vital, obviously, to selecting partners and all kinds of things. Thank you.
I'm trying to think back to what I said the last time. To
Kelly,
make sure that I'm saying the same thing. Yes.
if I may comment, I can't recall elementary school being given priority points. It has been middle and high.
That's the competitive priority number 4 is the from the safe schools. Am I correct, Alex? Where they
Yes,
get
that is
additional
correct.
funding?
Oh, this additional. Okay, sorry.
Yeah, this is the additional funding. And that one is specifically for middle and high school.
Right, that's my memory.
Dr. Clay, I sent you a quick email.
Okay, cool, thanks.
Could I ask a follow-on question to that same priority?
Mhm.
It gives a whole list like decreased truancy, increase attendance and things like that, reduce violence. And I'm assuming the list is disjunctive, not conjunctive. Like we don't have to do all of those things, right? If we answer this priority. We can choose like reduce community and school violence and lessen juvenile agency referrals. Is that true?
Say it one more time.
Okay, so there's a whole list in that priority
Mhm.
of the goals that you want to achieve,
Mhm.
such as reducing truancy, bettering attendance,
Mhm.
decreasing suspension, decreasing school and community violence, lessening juvenile agency referrals.
Mhm.
And it lists all these things, and the last one is or the last thing.
Mhm.
And I want to make sure that we don't have to do everything on that list if we choose this priority, right?
That's correct. That is correct.
Okay. All right.
Yes.
Thank you.
And let me go back, because I want to be extremely fair around the question about the elementary school applying for priority 4. elementary schools will be able to apply for priority 4. You just have to change some of the language. So it is elementary, middle, and high. I think it says middle and high in there, but that gives those programs more of an advantage. So I will allow elementary schools to apply.
Right. Put that in writing.
Say it again. Yes, it will be in the question and answer. I will put that in writing.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I had my hand up. Dr.
Oh, I'm
Katz.
sorry. You know what? I did not see it. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No problem at all. Because I think I was probably the only one. I was just waiting for all the comments in the chat or the questions on the chat to go through. This is Vita from Global Kids. Thanks so much for the overview. And it's great to see the funding being announced again. Some of us have been waiting for quite some time for the funding to go through. I guess one clarifying question on the partner attestation and DCPS issue. In the past, I recall that we also needed, a principal. I can't remember whether the principals themselves also needed to do a sign portion of the attestation as well as the LEA, the DCPS partnership office. So I can't remember that piece, but in terms of actual partnerships and negotiation for that piece, are we going specifically to DCPS? Is this a communication between your office and DCPS partnership office that we don't necessarily have to, for a lack of better word, chase after principals, particularly in the month of summers when they're not it's hard to get a hold of them. So I just want to understand that piece. And then the other piece, in terms of the priority points that are listed, did I understand correctly that some of those are optional, but they are priority lists? Or are these required pieces? For example, when someone just commented about, truancy prevention or violence.
Those are optional. The priority points are optional.
Are all optional. Okay, good.
Yes, all of the priority points are optional.
And my final question is, if there was conversations about academic enrichment, and in the past we have done that, and you had mentioned that homework help, for example, does not necessarily include the academic success piece. Are there a few examples of academic success programming that happens within the after school hours that you can provide? And I'll stop.
Say that very last part again. Is there what?
Any examples that you can share with us about an academic success enrichment program for the after school providers? I'm just trying to understand what type of programming is now considered, a priority for academic improvement. In the past, homework help, for example, was considered one of those examples.
I am thinking because I have to be very careful of what information I say. Because this is competitive, and I'm very hesitant to say this program or that program.
Okay.
Does tutoring?
It needs to be research based. Who was about to ask a question?
Homework help is not, you can do it, but this is not a homework help program. What about tutoring? Is that the same as homework help, or that tutoring could be academic?
I believe that if you look in the examples, tutoring is one of the examples.
It is.
So
but you can't. Tutoring isn't homework.
I'm sorry, say it again.
No, never mind. Sorry.
Oh, okay. And then you asked another question about
yes, the DCPS question. I just want to clarify that. Do we
Hi,
only.
Rita. It's
I was gonna say,
Margot. I
let
think,
Margot.
yeah, I think I can clarify.
Okay.
So as an organization is developing its grant, its grant plan and its application, it should be reaching out to the school and having
Right.
intensive conversations with the principals about what you're intending to do and making sure that they are on board with it, right? And because the whole thing assumes that there's this real partnership between your
Mhm.
organization and the school. The form itself, though, should be sent once you've done that and you know, like, yeah, I am going to be working. We have talked, we have a plan for me to include in my application that I'm going to be serving X school. Then you should write up that form and then you should send it to the partnerships office and they will take care of getting it processed and sent back to you in time for your application. And they're well aware of the deadlines and all that stuff. But I wouldn't delay too much on getting those forms. Like if you send it in on the 10th, they may not get it back to you on
Of
the
course.
11th, right?
Of-
So I would say that, people should be thinking in terms of getting them to the partnerships team like by the beginning of August.
Right. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that there wasn't any physical sort of piece that the principal needs to sign, because that was one of the things that we were having trouble previously.
Yeah,
In terms of the
later on,
conversation.
so I think later on, anyone working with DCPS has other requirements that they will need to fulfill. For example, they will have to have a memorandum of agreement created between their organization and the school system. And that's something that's kind of a time-consuming process too. It doesn't have to be done in anticipation of your application, but it should be something that if you really are applying for this grant, that you should begin to develop an MOA with DCPS as well. The second thing is you'll have to have a building use agreement, and that's signed by each principal or their designee, saying that you're using X spaces in the building. And then DCPS has to obtain proof of insurance from your organization.
Sorry, Margot. I'm so sorry. Just for me, but unless you're explaining this to folks who don't are not aware, I know that process very well because all of our programs have been with DCPS for the past 10
Yeah.
years. My only question, sorry, was for this particular application, the attachments. I want to make sure that I'm clear on the attachments. For the attestation, we don't necessarily need a principal's signature in that document. I know that once the grant, if it is awarded, there will be pieces, and
Yeah.
yes, all you and yes, all of that. Totally.
Yes, it's my understanding that they go to the partnerships office and they're handling the sign off from the LEA, not from the individual school. I mean, there are very few things that any principal is authorized to sign on themselves, on their own on behalf of the school system. So this is just one of those things.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mark,
yeah.
Mark,
But I was explaining for other organizations that might be in this meeting that haven't necessarily been through all these processes before. So the MOA, the insurance requirements, the clearances will all have to go through DCPS if any of their staff or volunteers are working with children in a DCPS school, and the building use agreement. So there are a lot of steps that will be part of this. Should you get an award and you become part of working with DCPS if you're not already.
Margaret, can I
Okay,
ask
and
a
just to
follow-on
clear,
question?
I'm sorry, just to
Yeah.
be clear, we do not have to have, say, letters of support from the schools that we target to accompany the LEA form, to go to the office.
I don't think
for
a
the
letter of support is a requirement of the application.
It
Just
is
the
not.
attestation form.
All right,
Correct.
thank you.
May I ask a follow-on question for Margaret? We have a community center as our after-school program, so we still have to get an attestation form, even though our program is not school-based, correct?
I think the answer is yes, and
Yes.
if I read it correctly, you're supposed to have it pertain to the schools where the students primarily come from.
Okay,
That is
all
correct.
right, that's what I thought too. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? I see another hand up. Let's see.
I have a hand up, but I can't see where to do the typing.
Oh, okay. You don't have the chat, then just ask your question aloud.
Okay, thank you so much. Yes, I'm trying to find out if there's anything that will be done in the process to verify what an applicant might submit. Let me just say that I was once put in someone's application as a consultant, and I had no knowledge of that. I found out by happenstance. But I thought that was really a abuse of the process. You know, I think that just remains a valid concern on my end. Is there any way that you would verify that if any applicant wants to say who they will use as vendors, you have any idea whether or not, you know, they're being truthful?
Well, if that is the case, then they should be submitting a partner attestation with that person if they are working with them as a partner.
Well, yes, in this case, I found out that a applicant had not used me as a partner, but put me in as an evaluator, and they had not consulted me about that. I'm an evaluator, and yeah, so I would be a contractor, and they put me in their application. And again, I found out afterwards and told them I thought that was an abuse of the process. It certainly, you know, in my opinion, I don't see how it serves the other applicants to have someone do that. So I just want to bring that to your attention.
Well, thank you for bringing that to our attention.
Mm-hmm.
I would hope that someone would not do that and add your name to something and you not know anything about it.
Okay, and it may be something, you know, you want to have some safeguard in the future, that maybe there's some kind of for contractors as well, that there needs to be some sort of validation process. Thank you.
Thank you. I see one more hand.
Hi, this is Jared Fisher with Dance Institute of Washington, and I know from the year that we had OSSE 21st Century, we partnered with Coolidge Senior High School. We had their attestation form, but because the school was undergoing renovation, we wound up serving the young people at our nonprofit facility. And I'm wondering, does your agency give equal priority to serving the young people either at a nonprofit space or a school? Or do you look more favorably on serving the young people directly in the schools?
As long as you are providing a safe place for students to engage in a good learning environment, that is what we're looking for. There are not additional points or preference, whether it's in a school or community-based learning center.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I think that is all of our questions.
There is one additional question from Anne in the
okay,
chat.
sure, thanks. It is, okay, I missed it.
Did you want to read and answer it?
No, go ahead, what is it?
The question says, should we send a partnership form for every school? In the RFA, it indicates, first of all, that all LEAs operate differently. So please be sure to contact the LEAs that you are proposing to serve individual schools if you are planning to be in the school site or have a community-based site. However, OSSE is not requesting one partnership attestation form per site, so long as each site is within the LEA. So if you're proposing to serve schools that are operated by 2 different LEAs, you would need at least 2 partnership attestation forms, not 1 per site.
Thank you. Okay. Well, thank you all very much. And we will get all of these questions in the question and answer document, which will be posted after July 19th. Good luck. Thank you.
Thank you.